I'm going to already start practicing not reading. So as Shabbat is eking away, we're a little bit in that intermediate phase. If it were a weekday, we would already be starting, but because of Shabbat, we're extra careful. So let me tell you what's coming up, because it's a very complicated service, unique service, as I tried to put in that email. So many things that we would normally do, we don't do. We have the ark closed because the plain wood is preferable to seeing the curtain. And I mean, I was going over with Meg and Lynn at home. There are many things I can't recount all right now, but it's a topsy-turvy service in so many ways. Tomorrow, in the afternoon, there's a big law that comes into play a lot in Torah reading, which is you never skip a column. And then tomorrow, we're required to skip a column, basically in the middle of the reading. It's topsy-turvy, and we're turned upside down. As many of you may know, the term in Hebrew for the Chorban, for the destruction of the Beit Mikdash, the temple, is literally a turning upside down. And so much of what we're doing in that commemoration is turning things on their head. Part of that is that we're somehow reading in the dark. And so the way I've accommodated it is I've made spaces that have light, and I've made spaces that are darker. And so I understand that it's topsy-turvy, and maybe it's meant to be that way. It's creating all kinds of feelings in us by putting us out of our comfort zone. But like, that doesn't mean you can't seek the comfort zone of a row that has light so you can read. It's getting you out of your comfort zone by saying you have to get up and move from your makom because I just can't read this book anymore. So you're encouraged to find your place. There's nothing wrong with finding a place that has light, but there is something wrong with my turning on all the lights. And so find the place that is comfortable for you as the service goes through. It's customary to sit on the floor as in a house of Shiva, but you're not required to until we get to the book of Eicha. And even then, obviously, like in a house of Shiva, not everyone is sitting on the floor. So I put it as encouragement or custom. So there's also the custom that we would start the service and then read the poetry. But for tonight, I thought we'd read much of the poetry first and then start the service and have the book of Eicha. And I know that there's some folks who are walking and coming from farther away with the end of Shabbat. And so for them, we may have some people showing up closer to 9:30. So I told them they will not miss the service. And that will respect the full sanctity of the full Havdalah period. Even though we can greet people at the moment, we're now heading out of that as we begin the service. So just as in a house of mourning, you don't greet people. You're not supposed to say, hey, Laurel, how are you doing? And so that's beginning now, that to the extent that you can, you don't say, hi, how are you? Even though we know we have people that we want to greet. You can still talk to people. You can stand next to them. And if they have something they want to say, they can say, and you can respond. But we don't say, how are you doing in a service and a 24-hour period that's leaving a lot of porousness in where our emotions and our thoughts are going to be. The keynote, the dirges that are customary to read on Tisha B'Av generally focus on pogroms. And they're not only ancient. So there are all kinds of different keynote from different periods. I'm going to read a few later, but I want to begin today with ones that you may have in front of you, where it says selected poems of Tisha B'Av. And I'm going to take volunteers. To anyone who feels like reading can just, what I'll say is there a volunteer for this one, and you can choose to read in Hebrew or in English. You certainly don't have to read in both. And so for a few minutes, we're going to work our way through these. Toward the end of 9:20, 9:25, I may read a couple of medieval ones and possibly even a chapter of Eicha in English. Then at 9:30 approximately, we'll begin the brief Ma'ariv service and then do the traditional read of Eicha in Hebrew and one or two keynote to end with the end of the service. I'm going to begin with the first one. And then if anyone would like to read from Ballad in the Streets, actually you can just come up and stand next to me, or you can raise your hand at some point. Loneliness is always in the middle, protected and fortified. People were supposed to feel secure in that, and they don't. When they go out after a long time, caves are formed for the new solitaries. What do you know about Jerusalem? You don't need to understand languages. They pass through everything as if through the ruins of houses. People are a wall of moving stones. But even in the Wailing Wall, I haven't seen stones as sad as these. The letters of my pain are illuminated like the name of the hotel across the street, what awaits me and what doesn't await me. Jerusalem stone is the only stone that can feel pain. It has a network of nerves. From time to time, Jerusalem crowds into mass protests like the Tower of Babel. But with huge clubs, God the police beats her down, houses razed, walls flattened, and afterward the city disperses, muttering prayers of complaint and sporadic screams from churches and synagogues and loud moaning mosques, each to his own place. Would anyone come forward to read the ballad?
Ballad in the Streets. When I was a child, I sang in the synagogue choir. I sang until my voice broke. I sang first voice and second voice. I'll sing until my heart breaks. First heart and second heart. A psalm. Laura, would you do the next one?
Seven Laments for the Fallen in War, translated by Amichai and Ted Hughes. Mr. Berenger, whose son was felled by the canal, which was dug by strangers for ships to pass through the desert, is passing me at the Jaffa gate. He has become very thin, has lost his son's weight. Therefore, he is floating lightly through the alleys, getting entangled in my heart like driftwood. As a child, he would mash his potatoes to a golden mush, and then you die.
Ecology of Jerusalem. The air over Jerusalem is saturated with prayers and dreams. Like the air over industrial cities, it's hard to breathe. And from time to time, a new shipment of history arrives, and the houses and towers are its packing materials. Later, these are discarded and piled up in dumps. And sometimes candles arrive instead of people, and then it's quiet. And sometimes people come instead of candles, and then there's noise. And in enclosed gardens, heavy with jasmine, foreign consulates, like wicked brides that have been rejected, lie in wait for their moment.
You mustn't show weakness. You mustn't show weakness, and you have to be tanned. But sometimes I feel like the white veils of Jewish women who faint at weddings and on Yom Kippur. You mustn't show weakness, and you have to make a list of all the things you can pile on a child's stroller, empty of children. The situation is like this. If I take the plug out of the tub after a pleasant and luxurious bath, I feel that all of Jerusalem, and with it the whole world, will empty out into the great darkness. In the day, I lay traps for my memories, and at night, I work in Balaam's factories, changing curse to blessing and blessing to curse.
At an archaeological site. At an archaeological site, I saw fragments of precious vessels, well cleaned and groomed and oiled and spoiled. Beside it, I saw a heap of discarded dust, which wasn't even good for thorns and thistles to grow on. I asked, what is this gray dust which has been pushed around and sifted and tortured and then thrown away? I answered in my heart, this dust is people like us, who during their lifetime lived separated from copper and gold and marble stones and all other precious things. And they remained so in death. We are this heap of dust, our bodies, our souls, all the words in our mouths, all hopes.
This poem is called Jerusalem is a Cradle, and it's not in the booklet. It's also Amichai from Poems of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a cradle city rocking me. Whenever I wake up, strange things happen to me in the middle of the day, as though to someone descending the stairs of his love's house for the last time, with eyes still closed. But my days force me to open my eyes and to remember everyone passing me. Perhaps he'll love me. Perhaps he has planted a bomb wrapped in nice paper like a present of love. I observe all the weak spots in these stone houses, the crack through which electricity enters, the hole pierced for water pipes, the crack for telephone wires to penetrate, and the mouths of sighs. I am a Jerusalemite. Swimming pools with their voices and noises are no part of my soul. The dust is my conscious. The stone is my subconscious. And all my memories are closed courtyards at summer's high noon. Yerushalayim Ir Eres. Deborah, would you share the poem that you selected for tonight?
Sackcloth, a poem for Tisha B'Av by Rabbi Janet Madden. As Jacob responded to the news of Joseph's death, as Mordechai learned of Haman's decree, as the king of Nineveh proclaimed a fast that extended even to the cattle, so she too wrapped herself in the harsh embrace of sackcloth. Arms raised to the heavens, she fasted, tore her hair and rent her garment, beat her breast. Tides of anxiety, violence, and despair engulfed her world. Strapping on her sandals, invisible in the mass of weeping exiles, she searched through columns of cedar, broken as her people found a forgotten ember, breathed it into memory, a dream. Struggling from the rubble, her presence undimmed but hidden as the new moon, she stepped onto the road leading to all the worlds, joined with the mourning women, and raised a wailing heard in every generation. How can our eyes not run down with tears, our eyelids not flow with water as we, Shekhinah in our midst, journey from destruction to destruction?
We continue with the Scroll of Fire by Bialik. All that night, oceans of fire boiled and tongues of fire leaped over the Temple Mount. Stars struck out of the burnt heavens and fell, spark shower on spark shower to the earth. Had God kicked his throne and smashed his crown to bits? Had God torn his purple robe and scattered to the wind its tatters? On God's head, fire climbs, drinking thirstily the emptiness of the world. Will someone read part 2?
And when dawn glimmered on the mountains and pale vapors spread in the vales, the seas of fire stilled and tongues of fire dropped from the burnt palace of God on the Temple Mount. And the ministering angels gathered, as was their office, in holy choirs to say the morning prayers, and opened the windows of the firmament and stuck their heads out toward the Temple Mount to see. Had the doors of the palace opened, and did the scents of incense cloud ascend? And they saw, here was Adonai Tzvaot, the Lord of army hosts, the Lord of angel hosts, the Lord of stars, sitting with the blush of dawn on the ruins. His cloak pillars of smoke, and his footstool earth and ashes. His head dropped between his arms, and a mountain range of pain upon his brow. Silent and desolate he sits and stares at the ruins. The rage of all the worlds darken his brow, and in his eyes frozen the great silence. And the Temple Mount still all smoke, heaps of ashes, mounds of cinder, and smoking embers together piled, and glowing coals, heap upon heap, sparkle like piled rubies in the stillness of dawn. And the fiery lion who lolls above the altar, one single orphan curl of his mane's stray end flickers and trembles, dying on the wave of burnt stones in the stillness of the dawn. And the ministering angels knew what the Lord had done to them, and they were shaken. And all the stars in the morning with them, and the angels hid their faces in their wings, for they feared to look upon God's sorrow. And their song at dawn became a muted dirge and a still small keening. Silently they turned away and wept, each angel to his soul, each angel to his own soul. And the world cried in silence with them. And one silent sigh, silent and deep, from the ends of the earth rose and spread, and broke in the silence of the weeping. The heart of the world broke in pieces, and God could no longer be pent. And the Lord rose up and roared like a lion, clapped his hands, and the divine presence rose upon the ruins and went into hiding.
And one young angel, sad of eye and clean of wing, who kept the pearls of hidden tears in a cup of silent pain, saw above the morning star a curl of flame, remnant of the altar flame, as it flickered and trembled and died among the burnt stones of the Temple Mount. And the heart of the angel was afeared, and he was very sad that the last ember of God should go out, and the holy fire be wiped from the earth, and light be lost to the people of Adonai and his house for all time. And he hurried with a fire rake in his hand, and he went down to the ruins of the Temple Mount and rushed to the altar place and scooped up the flame of God from the conflagration and spread his wings and flew away. And he brought her to a barren isle and whispered, El Rachum v'Chanun, do not snuff out your last ember for all time. And the Lord saw in the heart of the angel, and he revived the flame, and he set over her the morning star and said, watch my daughter over my ember, that she does not go out, for she is the apple of my eye. And the angel of sad eyes flew back to his place where he guarded a hidden tear and a cup of silent pain, his eyes deeper and sadder than they'd been, and on his heart and lips the sting of the flame, a burn which would never heal, for he'd touched them to the holy flame beyond the point of healing.
At that hour, the enemy led in ships from the sack of Jerusalem 200 young men and 200 young women, the flower of the soil of Judea's hills. Youths dew slept still in their curls, and the glow Zion skies rained from their eyes. Their father, the stag of Israel, their mother, the doe of the field. And it became little in the eyes of the enemy to have them tortured and mar forever the life song of their youth. They chose to consume their souls with desolation and put them to death, a slow death of hunger and thirst. For the enemy said, they shall have no consolation and no shred of joy.
I'm going to read what's not in the handout. Some medieval and earlier keynote. The first one I'm going to read in English is from the great 7th century Pietist Elazar Kalir. And the perspective of this kina, written in the 7th century, it's called Bilel Zeh Yivkayun, on this night my children cry. It's that God has punished Israel and caused us to cry and wail, saying, let all the house of Israel join in my moaning and cry over the blaze which God has sparked. But what is significant about so many of the keynote, without making this a lecture, is that while God is part of the cause, as we are as well, for our own downfalls, God wails with us. So the question is not so much, is God part of the cause, as does God care? And so God wails with us in our pain. On this night, my children cry. On this night, my children cry and wail. On this night, my temple and palaces were burnt. Let all the house of Israel join in my moaning and cry over the blaze which God sparked. On this night, my children cry and wail. On this night, let her wail, the uniquely afflicted one, the one barred from her parents' house. When she left their house, the door was shut, and she went out into captivity, devoured by every mouth. And on this day, she was sent forth in consuming fire, set by an ember of God. And on this night, my children cry and wail. On this night, the wheel of fortune spun disaster. The first and the second temples were destroyed, and the disobedient daughter was discomforted. She was administered the bitter waters of the unfaithful wife, and the sign of guilt, the swollen womb, appeared. She was expelled from God's house and has forgotten what happiness is. God's animosity for her exceeds God's love. A forsaken woman, hers is a living widowhood. Zion says, God has left me. On this night, my children cry and wail. On this night, I grew dark. My lights were dimmed because of the destruction of my holy house and the ceasing of the Kohane's rounds. On this night, disasters surrounded and encircled me, and God convened the court, which issued 5 sentences of guilt. All because on this night, God saw to it that the original causeless weeping was given a reason. It became a night for weeping throughout the generations. On this night, my children cry and wail. On this night, 5 disasters occurred. It was decreed on the day our ancestors threw off all restraint, and therefore so many constricting and crushing disasters stuck to this day. It is a day destined for adversity. The enemy raised shouts of terror, saying, arise, this is the day appointed by God. On this night, my children cry and wail. On this night, my temple and palaces were burnt. Let all the house of Israel join in my moaning and cry over the blaze, which was sparked by God. The following kina is from the 1200s by Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg, and it was a kina written not for the destruction of the temple, but because of the public burnings of Jewish sacred books at that time. This kina marks the public burning of 24 cartloads of the Talmud and other Jewish holy books in Paris in June of 1242. This and other public burnings of Jewish holy books were the result of papal inquiries based on charges against the Talmud that were brought by a Jewish apostate. Seek, you who have been consumed by fire, the welfare of those who mourn you, all those who yearn to dwell in the court of your abode, of those who pant in the dust of the earth, who are pained and horrified over the burning of your parchments, of those who walk in darkness, bereft of light. They wait for the light of day, which will shine upon them and upon you. Seek the welfare of the person who moans, who cries with a broken heart, who constantly laments the pains of your wounds, and who bewails like jackals and ostriches and calls out in bitter dirge for your sake. How was it that you, given in the consuming fire, should be consumed by mortals' fire, and the trespassers are not singed by your coals? How long will you dwell in tranquility, pampered one, while the faces of my young ones are covered with thorns? You sit in haughty pride, judging God's children in every case, bringing them before your tribunals. You go on to decree the burning of the law and its statutes. And therefore, happy is he who would requite you. Was it for this that you were given by my rock in lightning and fire, that in the end fire should burn on your skirts? Sinai, was it for this that God chose you, rejected greater peaks and shone upon your bounds? Was it for this to become the harbinger that tradition would be humiliated and descend from its glory? I will tell a parable of a king who wept at his son's wedding because he foresaw that he would die. This is you, in your own words. Instead of a mantle of glory, wear Sinai sackcloth. Change your garments and wear widow's clothes. I will drip tears until they become a stream and reach the graves of your two noble masters. I will ask Moshe and Aharon on Mount Hor, is there to be a new Torah? Is that why your columns were burnt? In the third month, the Torah was given, and in the fourth, Israel turned betrayer to destroy your delight in perfect beauty. The enemy broke the tablets of the Ten Commandments and repeated the foolishness by burning the law in fire. And is this the double reward? My soul is in shock. How shall anything ever be savory to my palate again, after seeing what your plunderers have gathered? As in a condemned city, those who have spurned from entering your assembly have burned the spoils of the exalted in the main square. I do not know how to find the path that you have paved. The course which led to your righteous way has become clogged with mourners. It would be sweeter than honey to mingle my drink with tears. Would that my feet were tied in shackles. May my eyes delight to draw the water of my tears until they blot out from the sight all those who held fast to the wings of your garments and are no more. But they would dry up as they fall upon my cheeks. My heart yearns as your divine master wanders away from you. God has taken his valuables with him far away. And hasn't your sukkah fled as well, protecting you? And as for me, I remain alone, and I am bereaved as I look out at the top of your towering mountain. I will no longer listen to the voice of singers, for your stringed instruments, wind instruments, rhythm instruments, all are cut off from me. I will dress and cover myself in sackcloth because they were so precious to me. The souls of your slain had increased like the sand. I'm amazed at the light of day, which shines upon all, because to me and to you, all grows dark. Cry out with a bitter voice to the rock for your brokenness and your wretchedness. If only God remembered the love of your betrothal, gird yourselves with garments of sackcloth because of the fire which tore you apart and consumed that which you stored up. And finally, may the rock comfort you in equal measure to the days of your suffering. May God restore the captivity of the tribes of Yeshurun and raise up the lowly ones. You will again adorn yourself with ornaments of scarlet. You will take up the tambourine, and one day again dance and rejoice in your dancing. My heart will be uplifted at that time when the rock shall cause light to shine upon you, when God shall brighten your darkness and illumine your dark mist. We're going to begin the service now. So if you have the pamphlet or if you have otherwise, in the pamphlet, it'll be the beginning of the evening service. All is done in a whisper and a monotone.
אדוני השם מלך יעננו ויום קראנו, ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. We may be seated. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך. חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרבים. ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול. ואהבת תשמנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אהבת. אלוהיכם אמת. מלכותו ברצון קיבל עליהם משה ובני ישראל. לך נשרה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם, יחמוך באלים אדוני מכמוך נדר בקודש, אל תהי לא תוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך בגויים לפני משה זה אלינו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר כבוד אדוני יעקב, לא מחזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל, השכיבנו נא אלוהינו לשלום. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום ותביא עד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, שמר עמו ישראל לעד, ברוך אדוני לעולם אמן ואמן. ציון שוכן ירושלים, הללויה. רואינו ושמח ליבנו. כי המלכות שלך היא ולמאה תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו. יקדש וקדש שמי רבה, ויעמד דברי פרטי וימלך מלכותי, וחייכונו ומלכונו חי לכל בית ישראל, וגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יפרח וישתבח ויפאר ותרומה וינשא, יתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמו לקודשה, בריחו, לעילם מפורחתה ושרתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. סלן עמידה. יקדב יקדש מרבה. ימדתי ורקרתי וימלך מלכותי בחייכון ובמלכונך כל בית ישראל. בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו, אמן, יהי שמי רבה מברך. עולם עולם מעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ותרומה ונעשה. יתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלש מקודשה, בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושורתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם בימה, אמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותון ובתון כל ישראל, כל דם אבון וישמעיה ואמרו, אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ואמרו, אמן. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei morei haesh. For those who are comfortable sitting on the bima, they're invited to do so. We're sitting on the floor, and for those who want to stay in their seats. We begin with the first chapter of Eicha of Lamentations.
이지오예 야조 바라스타 아오마하자 야자 너희 바우니다샤 아셔티차 너야 보바카발라 Olamma nenafi vachimleta nu mahamajaka Beovelachitaves Be'adonai ve'havita Ihayiti solela Loetem poveteves Iditur Yesh makom Imachovi Asher Olavi Asher Hosha Adonai Yom Vavom Navo Imavom Eshkat Kotai Yudana Alas Ve'tetuvaglai Eshivani Apor Ve'tanani Shomema Olayom Dava Yiskat O Beshai Biado Yisargu Olo Savari Yisrokofi Yishanani Adonai Ite Tosu Dila O Abirai Adonai Tekirvi Kala Alai, Poetic, Webaturai, God, Kala Adonai, Yukula, Bas Yehuda, Al'ela, Ani Bovia, Eni, Yorkamai, Iwapakina, Yanate, Nishitapsi, Ayubanai Shomini Ikavar Oye Sation Beada Emna Temla Tiba Alai Beakos Ramsara Aisai Gushalai Aida Enehem Hariku Adonai Kiti Maviti Yuna Pohami Wadu Mahovi Yusaiwa Korai Altu Pasati Avati Mamahavai Emati Muni Muni Omanai Penai Vayagavu Yisroel Lamo Yashiru Etasha Hey Adonai Kisarvi Me'ai Amar Maru Nepati Bi Tekirvi Imaro Mariti Yikuchi Vatele Vavai Kamare Samu Ki Enapani Enapani Oy Vai Shamuati Sasu Yata Asita Eveda Yokata Mayu Kamoni Namo Polata Vanepa Olelamo Parashalata Vivo Opasha Ai Iwakonata Chapter 2. Yadi Abraham Adonai et Avsion Ishlif Yeshamayim Eretz Tiferet Yisrael Zachar Dorav Yomato Ilaha Adonai Rotama Et Konato Yaakov Harav Berato Tzareva Yehuda Yela Haaretz V'Yel Mamlacha V'Yisrael Gadav Ba'Ariah Keren Yisrael, Yeshiva Kor, Imino Mipne Hoye, Anivar Yaakov, Kesh Lahava, Omaha Sahadi, Kashto Yoye, Nitzav Yimino Gitzar, Yaharo, Ho Mahmadeh Ayin, the Odel Batzion, Shaf Ka'ish Amato, Haya Adonai, Koyehe, Viva Yisrael, Viva Ho Aminotah, Shifei Yitzara, Vayered, Vayehuda, Taniya, Aniya, Yamos Kagan Supo, Shifei Moado, Shika Adonai Tzion, Moed Shabbat, Nats Bezahamaho, Melech Bechonim, Zanah Adonai Yisbecho, Nir Liktasho, Peace be here, the Adoye, Pomod Aminotah, Oh, Naglubre Adonai Yomoe, Kashav Adonai Lashki, Omahatatzion, Nahataka, Oishiyado Mipalea, Ilperikomaya Tabumbahu, Tabu Arech Areha, Radeshi Bear Berita, Malcham Sareha, Vagoyim Enim Torah, Amivieha, Matsukazo Leadonai, Yeshu Aresi Muzikin Batzion, Helu Apar Al Rosham, Al Ruhu Sahaki, Oridu Aret Rosham, Litulo Yerushalayim, Halu Odenai, Marume Ahai, Nishma Aret Gevedi, Ashever Vatami, Eate Olehel Yone, Yerkobo Tirya, Imotam Yoru, Aye Dagan Vayayi, Ikaham, Kefala, Yerkod Tir, Ishtape, Masham, Elfe, Imotam, Aide, Adamela, Chabat Yerushalayim, Eshpala, Ancheme, Gatame, Bitulat Batzion, Kigado Kayam, Shivre, Mir Kala, Niria, Kazumash, Abedapel, Ohibu Al-Abone, Ashiv, Shivote, Yehezu Laha, Maso Sham, Umaduki, Zapu Allahi Kapayim, Obre Defer, Sharku, Yurosham, Alba Yerushalayim, Azotadi, Shiomro Lina Yofi, Maso Sokoharet, Matsu Allahi Fihem, Ohoy Vayir, Sharku Yerushalayim, Ahamru Biladu, Aha, Zehayom, Igu Masandrati, Asa Adonai, Shezama, Nisa, Emrato, Shretzidam Mekedem, Paras Lofama, Sama Akamai Koye, Evim Gerensarai, Akbibam Eladonai, Oh, Batsinon, Oridi, Lakali, Mayo, Mahamalaka, Avidi, Tukaha, Avidon, Badene, Umiro, Nivalaka, Levo, Shuro, Shinkri, Kamay, Libe, Nota, Ne Adonaka, Zehi, Elakapa, Nefesh Holayi, Atufim B'Rahav, Rosh Chutzo, Pre Adonai Adita, Lemi Ulatato, מתוכם הנשים ירדו ותפוחים, יהרבה אם תהרבה, מקדש אדוני כהן ונביא. שפטו בארץ וצאנה וזקנים, ותורותיי ובחוריי נפלו בפתח, והרמת ביום את האפל, אפך טבחת לא חמלת. תקרא כי יום מועד לגורל מסביב, ולא היה יום אף אדוני לצרי. אשר טיפחתי וריביתי, ולתי עמם.
אני אדבר אני בשירת הרצון, אותי נחת ביד, כל שקר עתי אשר יעקב ידו, היום Shiva Ratnakai, Manai Yakas, Rajapa, Mahatakim, Shivani, Kela, Sadarvadi, Loite, Nakashi, Sanki Asaka Shadaya, Sasankyati, Sadarhamai Dayati, Nitigotaima, Kavarendri, Haridani Sari, Ramai Sararipa Shadini, Samani Shamen, Barakachira Tiveni, Matarate, maybe the Yotai, Venerashadam, Haiti, Zapatani, Vignatam, Koyam, Yeshiani, Zaharami, Germanilana, Praise, Natashinai, Ishani, this is not Mishal Nashi, Nashati Savash, Tauparaniti, Vitohati Adonai, Zatshaporti, Upri, Lana Zakor Tispor, Vetasha Apanashi, Zakashira Liki, Akinopil, Asyanai, Tiga Padu, Tiga Padu Rakama, Arashim, Zakaki, Rabana. I'll get up the love. So that I with the last and I flash the shadow. Oh, I feel the demand. Which you are the night of like a bag. Please, I'll be around. You share, but I think you can party yes, you can not make you happy. You've got a you love is not the you forgot Adonai L'Tziva, Mipye Aliyam B'Tzitzeh, Haraot V'Lato, Mayim Tameh Hatam Kai, Yadra Pata'ah, Nafisa Rapinu Naftora, Nashua Adonai, V'Tal L'Avinu Al-Tahayim, Al-A'u B'Shamayim, Nafnu Pashanu B'Ninu, Atal Salaka, Sakot Haba T'Tikanu, Harakabo Hamata, Sakot Hadanapa, Yabor Tzila Sefi, Kuma'ot Sesinenu, Be'eram Amir, Atualenu Pihan, Olenu, Hakad Bapakad Sayalanu, Hashem Hashaber, Halyayim Terani, Hashabaratani, Yehi Yikra L'Tzikan Ve'en Hafuros, Ad Yashkit Ve'er Adonai Mishamayim, Yehi Olam Nafshi Olam Tiri, So Saturi Katzipor Le'Ha'ayim, Sametu Abur Kaya, Bebor Kaya, Goyatu Atati, Sapu Ayim Rashi, Amarti Sarti, Karati Shimpadai, Ibor Tatios, Oli Shamatal, Salem, Osnaka, Tina Shabati, Harata, Yomaka, Amarta, Tira, Rata, Adonai, Vidayashi, Galata, Kayai, Rati, Adonai, Apasati, Shota, Yishati, Gagita, Koli, Mata, Olam Chotadi, Shamata, Merkata Madonai, Olam Chotamai, Sirke, Amai Leganam, Amai Kayam, Jirtan Likimatan, Likimatan Badika, Adim Likimatan, Hashim Bahan Morgai, Masegedegan, Yiten Akan, Medina Claire, Ta'at Ta'alahan, Tirtam Ta'at Tashmite, Yifat Hashanah.
Chapter 4.
Looking through
Inatu Kamau, Amru Bagoi, Loyo Siku Lagu. And Adonai Ilkaham, Loyo Siku Lagu. And Kohani Lonaku, Uskini Lokanan. Odeinu Tifanai Nidu, Alezra Nidu Halo, the Tipiateinu Tipidu, Alkohoilo. Sadu, Sadu, Ilata, Kokoteinu, Karamtiseinu, Aluminasidu, Ilakuteinu. Kali Mayu, Roteinu, Unishrei, Amai. Al-Tehari, Indelakudu, Salibar, Arguman. Ruahapeinu, Neshikiat, Adonai, Nokad, Nishkitotam, Asher, Mayu, Testilo, Sisi, the Simpli, Rateto, Yoshelet, Gamalai, Tabarko,
Chapter 5.
For Adonai Melayalanu Hakita Ure Esther Fatinenu Naflatenu Nes Abusari Fatenu Ari Anofri Itomi Mai Hayinu the Ain Ak Imutenu the Amano they may do the Kesef Chatinu Atenu Kir Yahavo Al Sabarenu near Dafnu Yaganu Garo Nahmanu Trying not new Yad Ashurish Boa Shlahan Avotenu Fatu Beinam Anafnu Avrutehem Savanu Avatim Ashubanu Korekin Yada Benashenu Nabi Lachmenu Itechare Habiba Orenu Ketanu Nichmaru Itezal Avo Nashim Ditzion Ibu Bituro Barekudra Sarim Yadam Ibu Netzkeni Hedam Bachurim Tachon Nasa'u Un'arim Le'etzkashawu Skeni Sha'ar Shabatu Bachurim Natan Shabbat Misos Libenu Nehafach Le'edam Cholenu Nafla Ateret Roshenu Oinamanu Chatanu Alzer Ayatavet Libenu Aveda Chashuru Einenu Oharzio Sheshamam Shuali Yefuru Adonai Elohim Tisher Is Acham Tzavador Hamanetzach Tishkachenu Tazbeinu Yami Hashiva Adonai Elecha Benashiva Kadesh Yameinu Kenet Imaos Naastanus Imaos Naastanus Katzaka Aveinu
The moment will be at Elysion, and I don't have the page number because I'm difficult. So does anybody have the Elysion? 48. We'll be there in a second. I'm going to read one more traditional Enoch that you don't have in the book report. This is the famous Enoch by Yehuda HaLevi from the early 1100s from Spain, and it represents
make it a little bit more open, but belonging that people outside of the land feel. Jerusalem, don't you have some greeting to return to your last remaining flocks, your captive hearts, who send you messages of love? Here are greetings from the west and the east, from the north and the south, from the near and the far, from every side. Greetings also from a certain person, a captive of your love, who pours his tears like dew on Mount Hermon, and longs to shed them on your slopes. My voice is like a jackal's when I mourn for your suffering. When I dream of how your exiles will return, I turn into a liar. My heart is aching for Bethel, Peniel, Mahanaim, every place where saints encountered messengers from God, where the Shekinah is your neighbor, where your maker made your gates that face the gates of heaven, where the glory of Adonai serves you for light, not merely luminescent bodies, sun, moon, and stars. You are the house of kings, the throne of David's God. Those slaves are sitting on your nobles' thrones. I wish my soul could overflow where once the Holy Spirit poured out over your life. I wish I could wander where the Adonai revealed God's self to visionaries and the prophets. I wish that somebody would make me wings so that I could fly away to you. So far, set the fragments of my broken heart among your jagged mountains. Throw my face down to your ground, to fondle your gravel, caress your soil. Even more would I delight to stand beside the tombs of ancestors and patriarchs and matriarchs, gaze at your choice graves, cross your fields and forests, stand at Gilad, gaze at Avarim, or in Avarim, the graves of two great whites, two men, who were your luminaries and your teachers. Your air is the breath of life. Myrrh flows, the dust that rises from your soil. The rivers are molten honeycomb. The joy my soul would have if I could walk naked, barefoot, on the ruins, on the rubble that your temple has become, where once your covenant tabernacle was, now hidden, sight of your two Purim that dwelt once in your hidden room. I'd shear off, throw aside my splendid locks, curse the fate that has defiled your Nazarites in an unclean land. What pleasure can I get in food and drink while watching dogs drag away your lions in your teeth? How can my eyes enjoy the daylight when I see your eagles' corpses carried off by crows? Cup of sorrow, be gentle now. Just let me be. Long enough to have my guts be filled with gall. Contemplate the face of Ohollah, the sepulchre of poison brew, to think of only God's fate is to suck the dregs. For Jerusalem is the most beautiful. Jerusalem designed your hair with love and grace, as your true friends have bound their souls to you. Your friends who are in joy, and you have peace, but ache at your destruction, weep for your disasters. God chose to dwell in you. Happy the one that God chooses to bring near, who makes their home within your courts, who wakes and leaves to see your rising sun, and lives to see your rising sun, the new dawn breaking over you, who lives to see those dear to you in bliss, rejoicing in your joy, when you return to what you were when you were young.
Service continues with Viata Kadosh. Viata Kadosh Yoshev Tilot Yisrael, V'Razel Zav Yamaham. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני. אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר. יקדש ויקדש שמי רבה, ויעמד דברי קראתי וימליך מלכותי. וחייכונו ומחנו וחייתו בית ישראל בגלה וזמן קריב, אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך. Alam Alamei Amaya, Yiparach Yishtabak Viparvin Mami Nase, Vitadar Vitala Vitala Shmer Kudisha, Rihu, Leila Mikol Chatav Shrata, Shishkatav Nechamata, Damiram Biamha, Imru Amen, Yehishlam Araba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael, Imru Amen, Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael, V'Imru Amen. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon HaKol, Atid Geulah Liotzer B'Reshit.נחנו korim v'mishtachavim u'modihim. נאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Mourner's Kaddish for those who are reciting the Mourner's Kaddish on this day, on this night. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach kirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach ve'olam u'lamel mayem. Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitala v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah richu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru.
One is permitted to talk on the way out, but one is not permitted to greet. And I leave it to you to find your way there. We'll meet again tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. and then again at 2:30 p.m. for Mincha.